Hello, everyone, and welcome to AI Safety Salon. I'm Andrew Broz, and today we have Timothy Telleen-Lawton with us. Timothy is interested in what's affecting the arc of civilization generally, and specifically, he's interested in the effects of collective intelligence and what that might look like. Welcome to the show, Timothy.
Thank you.
Yeah, so could you tell us more about like where you're coming from?
Sure. Um, where I'm coming from. I've been interested my whole life in how we do things better. And that's taken me through working for nonprofits most of my careers, working on climate change, working on AI safety for most of the last decade. It's been that long that I've been interested in it, at least. Um, and Yeah, and then most recently, feeling that I personally feel the most traction uh, towards doing things better as a sort of human species. um,
Okay.
when when I'm working with groups of people to uh, create like flows, uh, you could think of them as organizational structures, but it could just be like conversational structure that's so effective that it actually unlocks effectively a human collective intelligence that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay. So a human collective intelligence that's greater than the sum of its parts. Um, the five words you said were how we do things better. So let's break that down. So
Uh-huh.
we have, all right, so we have we, which in this case you're referring to groups of people, or what are
Or
you referring to?
humans in general, or there's a way in which, yeah, it's just sort of like whoever's asking this question, like these bits of the universe
These bits
that
of the universe.
that are
Yeah.
talking right now. Yeah.
Okay. So there's some sort of requirement on the bits of the universe that they be aware or agentic or something.
Well, I guess I'm assuming that like if I'm communicating with them with these words, then they're listening and on some word like level. So in that
Okay.
sense, I'm sort of imagining humans.
Okay. Got it.
But yeah,
Yeah. So we arbitrary scale humans.
right,
Um,
exactly.
all
Well
right.
said.
Very good. Things. So what are the things that are being done?
Yeah, what is being done? What are we
Yeah.
doing?
What are we
What are
doing?
we doing? And what do we want to be doing?
Exactly.
That's
Because
probably
you also
good.
have the word better, yeah, and like,
Yeah.
okay, what's
Well, I think I actually prefer the just striking the original and creating the two sub sentences of like what are we doing and what do we want to be doing. Um,
great?
Want feels like closer to me, or like I don't know, better than the word better to me.
Yeah. So you're embedding preferences in the word want.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like intentionalities. There's this thing that I call choice that that we seem to be confused about what it is because it seems hard to imagine choice in a deterministic universe, but also easy to model it in some ways if as something that's for all practical purposes everything we mean by the word choice.
Okay. Yeah. Everything we mean by the word choice gets very interesting
I bet
because,
that's probably
yeah.
I probably should strike all words that are all and everything with you. I can tell that I'm setting myself up for lots of rabbit
Oh,
hole
this
discussions.
yeah, this could be very rabbit holey, but it's not antagonistic. I don't think
Great,
so.
I can tell.
Um, yeah. So yeah, this is fairly interesting. So we can come back to all of that, but in the original formulation, which had the word better, there's
Mhm.
something in it that your new formulation didn't have, which is that maybe we're doing what we want, but we actually want something else, or like there's a better like what are we actually doing? What do we want to be doing? There's something in that formulation that seems interesting especially on an organizational level
Uh-huh.
or a collective level. Maybe that's a good place to.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts about that. It feels like we have at least partial self-awareness, which is a very strange thing. um it's a very strange thing to wake up and notice yourself as an inevitable part of a process that started before you ever woke up. And it sort of can't help but put you into an existential crisis. It doesn't have to be bad. It could be a, spiritual emergence. But it sort of begs a question to me. I think that clearly people have phrased the question it begs differently, and maybe we could argue about like whether it's all the same question or not. But I guess the 5 words were my attempt at it. One of the early things that occurs to me when I notice myself as part of us doing something, I notice that I like have preferences about how the arc of civilization bends. And in fact, it feels not just arbitrary and me, although it is also that. It feels like it carries a sort of deeper meaning or weight that gives me almost like a kind of faith that other people will see what I see when they see. And including and the real thing that they'll see isn't actually what I'll see. It's they'll see their own approximation of the thing that I'm approximating when I see.
Yes.
And the part that feels most meaningful and most weighty, like a gravitational pull on the arc, is the sense of that platonic ideal of the thing that we're all seeing a part of.
Yeah. So, and this point, like you're talking about platonic ideals and collective wants, and um, this gets into some areas where, like, economists have a lot to say about it, philosophers have a lot to say about it, etc. But
Contested
yeah,
topic space.
contested topic space. Like for example, in there's a theorem in economics. I cannot remember the name of the theorem, but essentially proving that for groups of people with non-aligned preference sets, there is no universal resolution of those preference sets that's available.
I assume that assumes no updating of values.
That does. So that assumes a static snapshot. It does not
Classic
assume that
economists.
classic economists.
Dying
Yeah,
on their hill of their assumptions.
I know. Spherical cows, etc.
Right.
But yes, of course. And so, yeah, what a lot of these models fail to do is, the time series exercise and assume that there's some sort
Look,
of preference updating.
there's something important about aspiring to be better than you are. There's something nice about it. I want to do it. I've met lots of humans that want to do it, and I have yet to met one that convincingly doesn't want to do it. And if you want to aspire to be a better version of yourself, you literally, I don't know what I mean by literally there. It seems to me you have to be willing to update your values. You have to, and not just arbitrarily. You want to actually anti-Goodhart up to the values that your values would have chosen.
Meta values.
Your meta values. And what is the meta principle that that you want all your values to ascribe to? Is one way to like point in that direction, which people usually do like this.
Yeah, we like this one.
This is a good direction.
Yeah, yeah.
This sky, it's beautiful. We see things changing, but it feels safe.
Yeah, we're large mammals. We don't get attacked from there.
Yes, that seems right. Yeah,
it's
scary down there in the trees.
Yeah, or down there. Yeah, in general.
Or really good. Bad if you're somehow underground. That seems terrible. But if you
that's flying, not good. Yeah, then you're safe.
What could stop you?
All right, let's get down to talking about you and what you were doing, what you wanted to be doing, and when you noticed the delta.
Ooh, okay. Well, the story that popped up for me then was I was working for an AI safety organization, Anthropic. I noticed hesitation about even mentioning their name because I don't want they don't want to be associated with whatever I'm saying, and I don't really want to be associated with whatever they're saying, but it feels like part of the truth that has no business to be hidden either. I yeah, I worked my strategy at Anthropic was very clear to me. And it's very related to the strategy that I wholeheartedly believe the co-founders of Anthropic also wanted, which is um, to um, to to create AI the smart way, where the smart way, the part that's smart about it, well, there's multiple parts that have to be smart about it for it to be the smart way. But obviously it includes both the like internal architecture of like actually creating the thing, but it also obviously contains how you manage it. And if you succeed at forging that ring, how do you use that power? And maybe I've already foreshadowed my delta, which is that I have lost no confidence in their good faith, and I've lost confidence in the strategy. Um, I uh, I now feel much more optimistic about strategies that are deeply and thoroughly like I wanted to say maximal integrity. I guess I'm just trying to create. I don't know. Sometimes I think of integrity as a binary, and sometimes I think of it as. But basically, I guess in the AI safety community, we talk about alignment, and
Hmm.
I feel so much more juice in human alignment than in artificial intelligence alignment.
Okay.
Start with the man in the mirror.
Okay, that's perfectly fair. I mean, you are not the only person who has made the point, and I completely agree that even if you had technical alignment, it would be pointless if you don't have human alignment.
I just don't even think you're going to get technical alignment until you are wise enough to know what that means.
That might be true. I mean, it depends on exactly what the problem ends up being. I don't think we've even defined the problem well enough
But
to get
wait.
there.
But don't you agree that if you don't know what technical alignment would mean, that you're not wise enough to create it yet?
I would.
Okay, I'll take
Yes.
it.
Yes. I mean, but okay, let's get into ambiguities here. When you say, again, use the word we,
Uh-huh.
and we is important in this case because there are many people who believe they know exactly what technical alignment is,
They know
and they
exactly
don't.
what technical alignment is.
They think they
Do they
believe they know
claim
what the
that
goal is.
loudly in public? That sounds kind of embarrassing and awkward.
It is embarrassing and awkward. Like one of them would be
Like
like
Anthropic doesn't claim this, for example. It's funny I keep using their name, even though I was wanting
sure,
to not to be dragged into this fight. But
but no, a loud name would be Yanakun.
okay, uh,
Um,
it makes sense that he would be on the team he's on. Then I guess I don't know.
it would. I mean, his loud proclamation is basically alignment is easy. It's purely an engineering problem. You just don't build the thing to do bad things, and it won't do bad things.
Okay,
That is a straw man,
right.
very simplified version, but essentially it's what he says.
So one thing I like naming agreement, especially with people that I expect there's some other disagreement with. Um, at least, and I'm just interacting with your version of what yeah, the straw. Yeah, like
Straw man Lakun, yeah.
yeah. Um, I agree that I do believe that there's a sense in which it's just an engineering problem. But that's like saying, hey, humans are just an engineer. Like the miracle of humans is just an engineering problem, and it's like
Right. At that
both.
point, you've redefined your scope.
Yeah, it's actually not really an engineering problem. It's a design problem. You know, it's something bigger than an
Yeah.
engineering problem. And you can map design problems to engineering problems, but you get really shitty results if you try to do design by engineering.
Yeah.
So I think we have a design problem on our hands. And my one sentence attempt to describe the design problem I see us having, the scaleless humans or whatever you called it, I like whatever name you had. Um, what is how do we choose?
Yeah. That's a hard problem. How do we
And
choose?
sometimes it's shockingly easy.
That's I might argue that that's an 80-20 problem. So like sometimes it's shockingly easy.
Hmm.
The edges are hard, and that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, I totally feel like that feels like a good lens for looking at civilization right now is like we're in the 20% that is like shockingly hard. But what part of what I'm fascinated by is when I start to zoom in on any coordination problem or like any attempt for humans to choose together like on the same team, then even if you start with really complicated messy knots like Middle East conflict, if you zoom in far enough, at some point it feels like it's on the 80 part of the 80/20, where it's actually just kind of like, yeah, like I want my kids to survive and you want your kids to survive. And actually there's obviously a way where we both win here.
Yeah. Um, a perspective on that is that if it were that civilization finds itself in situations where if it really were a democratic choice,
Mm-hmm. I
in
don't
that
think I wouldn't use democracy to describe my vision of collective intelligence, but
sure,
but there's something egalitarian about it because it's like
something
respecting all.
egalitarian about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, if there were a selection system at work
yeah,
which respected everyone's preferences,
yeah. Thank you.
that
That's the key. Yeah.
yeah, then a lot of problems in the world would have a clean, easy solution.
Uh-huh.
The selection system at work in the world is different in that
Right.
it does not respect everyone's preferences and in fact respects the preferences strongly, like with a strong preferentiality for people who have positions of power or for whatever reason, and that those people are not selected randomly from the population. They actually have unusual preference sets.
Right. So you're describing a positive feedback loop that seems to point in a negative direction.
Yes.
And that makes me want to point to the opposite positive feedback loop.
Okay.
I mean, I guess there's the cheap way where like literally anytime you have a positive feedback loop going in one direction, then it's a positive feedback loop going the other direction too. But I actually mean like um there's I agree with you that that part of the incentive landscape we find ourselves in is a sort of survival of the fittest thing. That
Sort of. Yeah.
so there's some sort of like natural natural selection, some sort of natural selection that happens where whatever is selected for is what you have more of in
Yeah.
this time step. Something like
Yes.
that is happening. And I think that one of the problems that Western civilization, wow,
Oh
I'm
man, yeah,
speaking,
the words are coming out.
this is bad. I'm getting in trouble. I just want to put like a disclaimer. I don't actually know anything. I'm not a scholar of any of the things I'm talking about. But I'm trying to like see with a beginner's mind. And what it seems like from here is that I, I spent most of my life trusting science and math more than any other authority.
Mm.
And um, those are great authorities, man. They're so good. I love those sources of truth. They're like great. And I unfortunately drank their Kool-Aid so hard that I somehow believed that like all sources of truth that are worth having or like all understanding would come through them. And
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a mistake. Yes.
yeah, it's a big mistake and it hurts because it's still happening a lot. And it happens on like all the level, like it happens on all the levels of our culture, as far as I can tell. Like it's a
Mhm.
pervasive delusion or something. And and
Okay,
so
so
yeah,
I kind of want to let you talk, but I also want to dig into this. So, like, when you talk about the pervasive delusion of like
there is
treating
no
science and math, yeah,
yeah,
as
effectively as a
totalizing,
religion. What do
right?
you say?
So I said totalizing,
Yeah,
like
totalizing, right.
on
That
right,
it's not that they're wrong any more than scientists already agree they're wrong. It's just that there's
Mhm.
other things that are also right.
Right. So there's a classic distinction in, I think was it Hume that made it originally? I don't know. I'm probably getting this wrong. But the distinction between is and ought,
Hmm.
and science and mathematics, and that those are all concerning what is, and have nothing and can have nothing to say about what ought be,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And so,
it sort of sets
yeah.
up itself, it fences itself out of that territory as a way to gain coherence in what is. It
Mhm.
seems like it's like, well, let's just talk about things that I don't affect by looking at them.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get all sorts of really weird and like naive and terrible ways of attempting to make science, especially math as well, but especially science, um, have jurisdiction of what ought be. Like
Good point. Yeah,
like
that sounds terrible. Sounds like a terrible
yeah,
idea.
it is pretty terrible. It
Yeah.
is a really terrible idea, and that's where you get stuff like social Darwinism and the
Mm.
like deeper applications of the naturalist fallacy.
Oh yeah, it
What
reminds
is
me of like even hearing in college about, I don't know if it's like natural moralism or something, something where believing that because it exists, it is what's
it's
moral. And
it's
there's
good, yeah.
yeah, and well,
Yeah.
there's something interesting about like I'm noticing there actually is a way in which I kind of think that everything that is cool and good and that, but like, but I don't want to confuse myself that I actually have preferences, and that it kind of seems like one of the cool things about humans ising human beings, a
Yeah,
also known as
yeah,
um, is that we somehow seem to be able to choose things that we like even better, or like
yeah,
we seem to have some sort of choice, and I don't want to forget that. I don't want to be. I love witnessing the beauty in anything in the universe. I think that every single thing in the
mhm,
universe contains beauty that in some ways actually reflects every other part of the universe, and um and so I don't want to lose that, but while I'm bedazzled by the beauty in the universe, I don't want to lose the fact that like one of the most beautiful things I see around here is like humans choosing things, and I want us to choose together.
yeah. Well, I'm noticing that when I brought up social Darwinism, the other thing I was thinking about is effective accelerationism.
Hmm.
And basically, there's a specific flavor of this naturalistic fallacy that focuses on process rather than state. So there's nature and the beauty of the universe that focuses on, well, there's a forest. I like forests. Forests are natural. They're great. And then there's a version of it that might be like for a social Darwinist, it's the process of natural selection and with an implicit competition is the key,
Uh,
is the process by which we produce moral value, and or is a moral value in itself. Or then
I
for the yeah, yeah, the
I just had the
the
funny
effect,
experience
yeah.
of feeling like a social Darwinist for the first time, by
Oh
which I
no.
by which I humorously mean um, that I actually think it's really beautiful to focus on process. But it sounds like the social Darwinists have the wrong one. They're worshiping the wrong god, if you will. It
Right. And
sounds
then so like if we were to bring up the second example, effective accelerationists, I'm picking on
okay.
them today.
Uh-huh.
Um, the process that they bring up a lot is thermodynamics.
What, they're trying to accelerate the heat death of the universe? What's
Essentially, yes, they go a little bit further than that and say that intelligence is actually a great way to accelerate the heat death of the universe, and therefore it's the best thing because it accelerates it the most.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It kind of sounds like the type of belief you might come to if you were more concerned about self-consistency than about where you were going.
Yeah, I don't want to pick on that too much because again,
I thought you
I
did
gave a
once.
one sentence. I do, but I don't in this particular conversation because I
Okay.
just presented a straw man version of what they think as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, we could go deep into it, but process, that's what I want to focus on. Yeah. And you
Yeah,
said picking the wrong process.
right. Um, it it sounds like in both those cases, my impression of hearing that is that like in both those cases, people noticed a very powerful process that was happening in throughout the universe, and that was like literally describing and determining their bodies and everything else we see in the universe, and that they decided to like worship that like a god. And
Yeah.
um I actually feel the like, yeah, I can feel I don't know, like uh one of the words it's hard to talk about in Western culture is spirituality because of our totalizing view on science. But I think spirituality is a great name for a very broad set of things that has some of the meaning making and truth that we were alluding to earlier of being an alternate like place to look for groundedness and direction and things that you might want as a human. Um, and there's actually like I use the word God intentionally there, although perhaps also provocatively, but like because there's a certain felt sense that I actually think is useful for real humans that might be listening to these words right now to notice. There's a real felt sense of surrendering to something greater than yourself. To noticing your alignment with something that maybe is agentic in some way, or is at least a pattern that's like bigger than you and runs through you, and choosing your alignment. That like that is who I am. I like my truest self is as a cog in that machine. Um. Uh.
Hmm.
And
So,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
So you've effectively given a definition of spirituality,
I
which
didn't mean
is,
to, but I might have. Yeah.
I think, yeah, you weren't intending to do so, but
Yeah.
um, it's like, and correct me if this sounds completely bonkers or
Mhm.
wrong or just fabricated, but it's alignment with like a greater whole.
Yeah. The experience of aligning to a greater whole. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the word experience feels important to me there. I don't even know why, although we could examine it if we wanted to. I think it's because I'm speaking to a Western audience, and the experience is what we're often missing. Literally
Hmm.
the somatic experience, the like where in your body do you feel the greater whole? That kind of thing.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So spirituality, if we're using your definition of it, or like my interpreted definition of what you were saying,
Maybe it was a
then
joint definition.
it was a joint because you added experience.
There's some sort of
Um,
greater intelligence here that's defining spirituality.
indeed, indeed. Um, requires no supernatural element,
Oh,
which is
absolutely
interesting.
not. Yeah. I don't
Right.
I don't think I'm not expecting scientists to come out and say we were wrong about science. I am expecting wow, I didn't expect this way. I set myself up for this. I guess I am expecting them to come some of them to come out and say they were wrong about something, but it's not their profession.
Yeah. Not
It's
the domain of science, but
exactly. And in
yeah.
fact, that's why there are actually a lot of scientists that are religious, is because there are a lot of people that are smart enough to notice that science does not contradict spirituality, and that they have something to gain from that. Even the wisest scientists have something to gain from something greater than themselves that isn't objective in that sense.
Hmm. So traditional religions certainly have that, both the experience of alignment with something greater and the practice of aligning with something greater as something very key to them. I don't know if it fully covers traditional religion, but it does seem like an important component.
You're saying spirituality isn't the whole story of religion, but it's part of it.
Correct.
Yeah, I totally
Yes.
agree. I mean, so I think we need the social Darwinist God to help explain what we see in longstanding religions. It's hard. Have you ever tried running an institution for thousands of years in human history without it like accruing cancerous growths? Like it's
Yeah,
hard.
yeah, I've thought about this a lot. like,
Like
what's the natural behaviors that, it's a mimetic survival of the fittest, as it were.
yeah,
But then you also have like some of that is it's not really existing within a highly competitive population in some sense. So yeah, they're not religions aren't individuals in the same way that human animals are in our
Oh,
animal
I
society.
was totally thinking of it as being fully subject to mimetic pressures. Um,
Yeah.
but, um, well, I'm not sure where you were going with that point, but I
Yeah,
kind of
no,
think
no.
we
So
were
like,
secretly
yeah,
agreeing, but I was surprised at how much you were underselling it or something.
yeah, no, no, no. I think we are agreeing. They're very subject to mimetic pressures, but there's some really interesting dynamics of their survival and mass that involves big group dynamics and
Right.
yeah,
Well, yeah, like different levels of abstraction of the, there's the biological evolution, and then there's like cultural evolution of tribes or whatever, and then
mhm,
like viral memes through an
right,
internet economy or whatever.
yeah. But one of the things that's glommed on to all that other stuff is what how you're defining spirituality, and it does seem important. Like,
Yeah.
so what have you been doing in
Um,
relation to this?
yeah. Are you up for me actually taking one more thought on the last thread?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Um, I think I heard a hint of this in somewhere in your questions that it felt important. Um, so this is where we diverge, I don't know, from the straw version of social Darwinists. Um, because I would agree with them that there's a massive selection effect, mimetic natural selection effect on like religions, and then that's determined huge things like crusades and stuff, terrible stuff like that about how religions have expressed in our civilization, um, and civilizations, I guess probably should say in our species. I meant, and uh, but there's this that's the negative positive feedback loop we've talked about, where it's sort of like, well, it seems kind of bad if you just take to the extreme the idea that the survival of the fittest and like the might makes right, and like the only one left standing at the end will be whoever has the biggest gun or whatever. Um, and that's a very like hopeless vision, like, well, in the sense that it doesn't sound good. So it sounds hopeless to me and most people that I know who hold something like it. Um, but I have good news.
All right, share the good news. Tell me the good news. You sound like my grandparents right now.
it it turns out that if we have a way of pointing at the thing that is better than all the things we can name, and if we have like an internal compass that's good enough at like keeping us pointed in that direction, it doesn't even have to be perfect. It's just an 80-20,
Hmm.
then um, we can actually create a selection pressure that actually is more powerful than the god of social Darwinism. And it's the god of collective choice. I don't know what the name of it is. I don't know. It's it's like having the humility to find the thing that's better than the thing you were looking for.
Hmm. So, are you familiar with the meta crisis
John
discourse?
Vervaeke,
Yeah, Vervaeke and Schmachtenberger and other folks.
just a
Um,
bit, but yeah.
just a bit. So, in the models that they talk about attractors
Hmm.
and claim that our society is currently um, moving in a direction where it'll fall into two attractor basins. One of them
Hmm.
is chaos, and the other is dystopia, right? And that those are the attractor basins for our
Oh, so
civilization.
that's the heat death of the universe is the chaos, and the dystopia is the might makes right.
Yeah, I mean, sort of like when when they end up talking about it, it ends up being like civilizational collapse is chaos, and
Yeah,
dystopia is the panopticon.
yeah.
And the they're they Vervaeke and Schmachtenberger argue that the thing we should be seeking is a third attractor. It's like
It
that, it's a yeah, and the thing you're describing is the The
one
third
name for the
attractor.
third attractor.
One
And
name for the third attractor.
one of the cool things about the third attractor is it feels like all the names for it feel like approximations of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge part of where its power comes from, I think. And it's not a thing that we have to like create from scratch. It's a thing that humans have been summoning for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And using the label God just to keep track of it in our concept space. Um, and yeah, I think that something funny about the way humans work, especially in groups, is that whatever you focus on, you tend to like get closer to. And in that paradigm, yeah, it's important not just to be aware of the third attractor, but to be spending. We want to spend most of our attention on the third attractor. Like it's that'll tend to help it weave itself into our reality.
So,
Yeah.
what are you advocating for specifically? If you have any specific advocacy.
Yeah, I haven't been using that frame, but I can translate it. Like I want the first version of it that comes up for me is integrity. And I mean that at like all the levels of abstraction I'm tracking, I guess. But if you're a human listening, then your human integrity, like your integrity as an individual. If you're an organization that's listening, then like the integrity of the organization. And if you're an AI that's listening, then I want both your personal integrity and your integrity in the system with humans in which you arose. And yeah, I think that I've been pleasantly surprised by how much creative energy is unlocked when systems find their center. They find their internal compass. They find their integrity.
Okay. Center, internal compass, integrity, spirituality. So I'm seeing a link between these words.
Yeah,
But
the first three were kind of just synonyms the way I was using it, and then spirituality to connect to those, I would say was like the process of seeking your inner compass and following
mm-hmm,
it or whatever that is. It's probably not
yeah.
two things, it's probably one thing, but that process
Mm-hmm.
is like the process of spirituality or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's the experience in the process, right?
Perhaps, yeah.
And yeah, and the compass is pointing towards the North Star, which is outside of yourself.
It's funny how North is that way too, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It ends up being, yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, the majority of the population ends up living on the side of the Earth where we use the North Star, but
Right. So it's a kind of
for
natural
our,
coordination point.
it is a natural coordination point. I'm sorry, Australians and New Zealanders and
But the fact that you say
Patagonians.
that, but see, the fact that you say that is like a great act of like deference and a sign of respect. You're trying to show respect to all the humans and acknowledging that there's some sense in which it feels like their name wasn't included on the author byline, but you like kind of want them to be there.
Yeah, I do. I do. Very much so.
Me too. Thanks for
Yeah,
including them. They're now here.
they are here. Yeah. So, yeah, there's this thread about integrity and its relationship to spirituality and
Alignment is another relevant
alignment
synonym.
and alignment
Yeah.
that is fairly interesting because on the human side, I've heard many diverse traditions arrive at something quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It's part of why we're tempted to call it an attractor, I imagine,
yeah, that's what makes it feel like an attractor. I think
rather
a
than just an
person,
arbitrary fixed point or something.
right, a person that you should speak with is actually the first guest we had on the show,
Hmm.
named Alex Zhu.
Oh,
You know
yes,
him?
he and I are friends.
You're already friends.
You're already
Have you
friends.
spoken? Have you spoken about your ideas with him? I'm guessing if you're friends.
We literally were on a Zoom call this morning.
Great.
Yeah.
It seems like the thoughts that both of you are
Com-
having are aligned.
Yeah, and we do tend to think about it like differently in different ways, but we find ourselves in a lot of alignment. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
I mean,
Um,
honestly, it's less that it feels, yeah, it's more that we feel like we share a lot of language so we can talk to surprising depth surprisingly quickly. But like on some level, to go back to this point of the third attractor, like part of what's cool about it is like I actually feel, as far as I can tell, fully aligned with you.
hmm,
And obviously I don't have as much depth with you as my friend Alex, but like I literally my best guess is like we're trying to get to the same place.
my best guess is that that's also true, and that we
And
share some intuitions about the arrivability, like that there exists, like as you were putting it, that there are a lot of cases where there's an 80-20, and it's worth searching for some process by which we can get there.
there's something interesting about I noticed how, I said we want to get to the same place, and you said we share a belief that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I agree. And I want to point out an important nuance there that feels to me like I best saw it pointed out in a Less Wrong article by Anna Salomon recently in the last couple of months. It was called Belief versus Believing in or something.
Hmm.
And basically, she was making the distinction between a belief. She was saying, let's call a belief a thing where it's like you're making a prediction, which
Okay.
is like what I heard you saying. Like, we believe that it's possible. Like, we believe that the odds are over some threshold of possibility to get
Hmm.
there. And that's a belief we share. And then there's a believing in, which is kind of like belief, but it's actually not a prediction. We're going to define it instead of to mean a prediction, something like I am acting in alignment with this eventuality or like with this process or this God or spirit or whatever you want to call it.
This the is ought distinction
There
again.
we go. The is-ought distinction.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it from this angle, so I appreciate you naming that then. That feels more real to me now. But part of what's important about it to me is I actually think that it turns out that in order to get humans aligned with ourselves and each other,
Hmm.
in order to find ourselves aligned feels more accurate because I don't think we're supposed to force each other to get into alignment. I think we're
Yeah.
supposed to notice that we're already aligned in some way.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that it actually doesn't, I can't tell. It doesn't seem to me like it necessarily relies on the belief, the prediction that it'll work. Um, uh, Although it does seem relevant that it's like our best shot at it working. Because if it wasn't that, then I would be,
Well, like a belief as a
uh-huh.
like the is of it
Yeah.
is important insofar as we're agents that are trying to influence the world, right?
Uh-huh.
The yeah, beliefs, the isness is the
Like
map,
like especially if you're trying to
right?
model the world, right? Like the
Yeah, you're
modeling.
trying to model, or yeah, you're trying to
Yeah.
create a map, right?
Yeah.
And orient to the map,
Right.
because yeah, like yeah, without a map, without any is statements,
Uh-huh.
then orientation isn't possible.
Okay, but I think part of our confusion seems to be, yeah, the relationship to this like map building and using maps. And from my current perspective, it feels kind of like, um, okay, I'm talking about in the individual experience of this from my perspective, feels like it actually works better when I don't worry about the maps. And I
Okay.
and I and instead I worry about the ought, I guess,
Hmm.
where the ought is has its own version of simplicity, in part because it threw out the map.
Hmm.
Not totally. It's working with the map, but it's like on an experiential level, it feels like surrendering my the things I'm holding on to, the is I want to become true. And instead I'm noticing that I'm aligned with this process that will get me there if anything can.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well, yeah. So that has a lot. Isn't really a statement about the value of is.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
statement about the where you're placing the like. Yeah, it's a pragmatic
It's
recommendation
a,
about where to place your attention. Yeah,
exactly, it's an
like
ought. I'm just making
yeah,
an ought statement
yeah,
about is, which is you oughtn't is. Is gonna is itself,
yeah,
but you ought to ought.
yeah.
If you're
Trust your ising. Work on your oughting.
yeah, trust in the sense of like don't worry about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Leave ising to being and
Right. So my question is,
yeah.
how do we want people to move differently through the world if they take this on wholly and completely?
Well, one is stop building things on top of like an unsolid foundation. I'm the first one to say this. um, if you notice that you're not aligned with yourself, then prioritize that over building things to affect other people. There are ways that I've seen collectives invite a deeper integrity out of the individuals in them. And so I'm not actually claiming it has to be bottom up, but I'm claiming that like the thing you build isn't going to have higher integrity than you. And most of us, if you buy that much, then for most of us, the edge or like bottleneck on effective creation and building is actually something that looks more like our integrity rather than moving objects around in the world.
Okay, so I want to challenge that for a moment.
Great.
You, before this call, we had a brief discussion about how to introduce you and where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the words that you wanted to use provocatively
Oh,
was the
God.
word superintelligence with
Uh-huh.
respect to human groups.
Uh-huh.
And that implies something interesting to me. Of course, this is a very, very non-standard use of superintelligence.
Well,
But
you just mean it's non-standard because 99% of the use cases we have so far are people referring to artificial intelligence in particular.
yeah, yeah, and also definitionally, when they're talking about artificial intelligence, superintelligence means not merely smarter than a person, but also smarter than any arbitrary group of people. At least that's how it
Is
was.
that how we defined it? I
That's the way that I encounter it most. I agree that there's a lot of variation.
Yeah.
But
I'll let you
like,
get your yeah.
yeah, but the idea is that you build some sort of system that can overcome human systems. Like,
Right.
and when you were talking about super intelligent human groups, one of the implications is that the group behavior is somehow more than individual behavior with respect to intelligence, which we can go through the exercise of defining intelligence if we want, but
Really not.
probably not worth it right now. But do you made the statement that an organization is not going to have more integrity than you,
It seems like it. It's the kind of
right?
belief that I'd be happy to be, shown evidence to the contrary or whatever. Well, I guess I'm now coming up with already counterexamples in my mind, which comes back to the third attractor. Like if you manage to birth something that, which I think this is related to the thing I was saying about groups can like invite individuals to higher integrity, and it's actually possible. I
Mm-hmm.
can easily imagine people. I've seen me do it myself. Of like, I am smart enough to get a group of people together that I know will have a high collective intelligence,
Yes.
and to know that like it will invite me into a higher intelligence when I'm part of it, and then it works. So like in my mind, that's kind of like a way of I'm somehow smart enough to like throw my lot closer to the third attractor,
Mm-hmm.
and then the momentum of its gravity well like pulls me along behind it or whatever.
Okay. So I see what you're pointing at, that there's a specific in purity of intent that
Yes, the
the
purity of
organization
intent
is.
is a great term because that's this.
Yeah.
This is the purity of intent.
That's the thing the organization can never do better than you can. And like all the other things it can, like in terms of like even sense making, it may be able to do better. It can do better thinking. It may even like produce a better ought alignment in some sense. But that kind of, there's a thing you're pointing at that yeah, it seems
Yeah,
true
I like
true
that
about it.
reflection. I'll continue it by saying that I want to add the caveat. It feels like an important caveat. It's not that for the organization to be better than me at this, it has to, what do you call it, respect me.
Yeah.
It has to fully respect me. It has to, in that sense, submit to me as a peon in this massive organization. It has to submit to my inner compass. I don't know. I'm using that. I got excited about that word. I don't think it's necessarily that important. I just mean that this is what integrity looks like on an organizational level. If you create an organization that fully respects all the subparts of it, you have created an aligned organization, and I bet you will be shocked at how powerful it is.
Do you know Richard Condon?
No.
I would love to connect, yes.
It's funny just how aligned that speech was with things he says.
It's funny how we're also not surprised.
Yeah, no, not surprising at all.
It turns out we have the intuition that it's not that I like rolled a d20 and came up with a view, but there was some magical attractor that
There's some attractor at work, yes, that's creating a view.
Yeah.
So, yeah, drawing back to this, what are you doing in the world to make? I suppose that a value you have is that you want more of these organizations.
Yeah, that feels like one way I like to think about doing things as humans is like doing a kind of zipper motion where you're pulling threads together into one thread, and where the two threads you might think of as like my fantasy and my perception of reality, and I'm like zipping them into unity because I want history to be my dream, like my chosen dream or something, and I want that to be true for all of us. And of course this works with multiple people too. Like if I want us to create if I want you and I to unlock creative energy, then I will invite us to both fantasize, to find the overlap between our fantasies, and then to find the overlap between our intersection of fantasies and reality. And just by seeing that, I claim that when we see that, we are inspired, because that is what humans seem to be here for. We seem to be here to notice how the world is, how it could be, and to bring them together according to our will.
It's very amusing to me just how much alignment there is in the language that you're arriving at, and Richard's language.
I mean, I'm sure there's like, in addition to third attractor, I'm guessing there's also causal connections. Since I don't know who he is, I don't know what they all are, but like even the fact that we speak the same language, I assume, helps.
Yeah. I'm not claiming it's monocausal either, but it's amusing to me, and
great.
I'd love to hear some follow up once you meet him and talk to him for a bit.
Yeah. So, well, I noticed you asked a question I didn't really answer, which was around like, what am I? So, but with a zipper analogy, part of what I like about it is it really invites. I think that to me, it really invites the zooming in on that juncture point, which is the present, where the possible futures are coming together into the present. And it feels like one thing that I want all of us to be doing, or something, one thing that it seems good for lots of us to be doing, is noticing where there's opportunities for zipper that they feel like they have some ability to zip, and like applying a little bit of pulling together pressure or zipping pressure, whatever that is. And I think it's really useful to notice where the zipper gets stuck. So it happens all the time. It's part of the human experience. And sometimes we freak out and we like throw the sweater away and we like give up on life, or we like hate ourselves or someone else. And I claim that one of the cool things about zipping in this universe is that if you zoom in enough, which is also known as patience, if you zoom in enough with your attention, which is probably the one thing you have or something, then you'll notice that there's actually, in my experience, there always seems to be actually a way forward for the zipper.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something about like not wanting to skip over. Like if you try to force the zipper and you like skip over the thing and then you end up having the teeth that aren't really interlocked, then you're just in denial. You're like creating bad karma or something. You end up like causing more problems later than you thought you could ignore. But so at a high level, I feel like my invitation, which is the equivalent translation of your advocacy question, like my invitation is to like have fun zipping. If you get stuck, zoom in.
Pull out the pliers, etc.
No,
Oh no.
I don't know. Pliers didn't feel good on my system when I was imagining them. That's part of the thing it feels like to me is like when you zoom in far enough, when you have enough patience and attention and spaciousness in that sense, it feels like it's actually smooth on some level. You might just have to zoom in a large amount to find the smoothness. It turns out the zipper's never stuck. It just sometimes seems stuck when you're too far zoomed out or skipping over things or something.
I'm just considering that. I also sometimes have a funny relationship to metaphors and analogies, but I'll take it for what it is.
Is that like you have a suspicion of metaphors for being grounded?
Yes, I do. I tend to think that there's so whenever I'm hearing one, I'm trying to be really careful and zoom out. It's like, okay, what's the referent? And is there a trap of applying the specifics of the metaphor to the referent where it may not apply?
That's an interesting process. It sounds like it's sort of it sounds like it has some of the is in it, where it's sort of like a fear about the is. Like, is this one of those things that traps us, or is like misleads us?
Yeah, is it a misaligning thing? Like it's part of the deeper suspicion I have about metrics in general, or any abstractions that are over specific, or in general as well. Like even a good abstraction can fail under certain conditions.
Well, and it seems like all of them fail under sufficient selection pressure towards them.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's certainly true.
I think this is the anti-Goodhart. Like should we explain Goodhart or?
Yeah, we should for this.
Okay, audience. So Goodhart is how when the metric is subject to a lot of selection pressure. So like if you start admitting people to a school based off of SAT scores, then the longer you do that and the more that people care about getting into the schools, the more that they're going to try to learn to the test. So just cause it to be the case that something stamped by SAT, whatever that is, prints out something that says your name and then has a high number next to it. And instead of actually like the thing that probably we really wanted was something more like aptitude for learning or something, which is harder, and the SAT was like a decent attempt to try to measure it. But once we optimize on that, it becomes less and less a good metric, because now people, if you have a lot of money, then you just hire a ton of tutors and you just basically have another year of schooling relative to the other people. And that's not really what we were trying to measure.
Correct.
Okay, so that's Goodhart, and it's very pervasive. And I think sometimes, especially technically minded people who tend to be, most impressed by the first and second detractors, will see that and then lose hope of there being a third attractor, because it seems so powerful, because it seems like it's like everywhere. And I think that if we have a chance to talk to some of those people that feel hopeless in the sense that they're worshiping first or second attractors, then we might try to like illustrate the possibility of an anti-good heart, the possibility of a positive feedback loop that actually goes in good directions. And basically, one way to think of it is like coming down to, do I believe? Yeah, it's interesting. I was going back to the is version of it, but like, I believe in following my internal compass, where it may lead me.
Right.
And I do also have a belief that like, actually that's probably the best way to get to the third attractor, is for more of us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that might mean in practice is things like caring more about good faith and being able to be a good faith actor than about, and like honesty, for example, than about like accruing resources that will be useful in a battle of good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
If we get into a battle of good versus evil, then we're in one of the first two attractor states. But if we find ourselves that we start to realize that actually we're all on the same team, that's closer to the third attractor.
And that's really what you would like. The word I used was advocate for, but that's getting close to what you want.
Well, it's funny. I think part of
More
what has
people to
thrown me
do.
off about the word advocate is that it feels like it's wanting me to have an opinion for other people.
Okay.
And what I've been focused on is like my own this. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe a better answer to your question, although it's useful to notice this, I hadn't consciously noticed this until we just stumbled upon it, but it's like, there's a way that me trying to advocate, it's not that advocacy is fine. It's not that it's bad, but like, it's a different motion than this. Advocacy is like, hey, I think I know where your thing might be pointing better than you do.
Okay.
Like, try looking in this direction. And sometimes that actually works. Like, sometimes people get really good at naming this thing, like helping people see their thing. But that's a really key important point. The people that are good at advocating or like teaching or like helping others through words, I'm gonna guess, I hadn't thought of this before, but I'm guessing that what they're good at is helping people that are listening find this thing in themselves, not at like teaching them a specific fact about the world.
Yeah. That's another indication to me you should talk to Richard.
Okay, great. Yeah, so
He's one of those people.
Great. Yeah, and so when I hear you, so now that I'm translating the advocacy question, then I'm sort of like, oh, how would I help other people find this thing? And I don't think I have anything more to say on that other than like,
all right,
doing the best I can.
The retreat in Bodega Bay, having them come over to Evergreen, having me part of the upcoming event.
Well, these are all very tactical.
Yeah.
But part of what I'm saying is that like, I think my expectation is that for most people, including myself, on the margin, the most juice comes not from choosing the right tactics, but from implementing them with higher integration to this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I have it that if it's baked into your way of being, then that wouldn't even be a question, because you would have utmost confidence that that's going to spill over into all these upcoming things. You have high enough confidence that also is the type of person to connect you with Richard, and those things will like be inevitable.
It feels, can I just try to do a like stupid translation of what you're saying?
Sure.
I think what I hear you saying is, if you have this, like, let's take for granted that you have this. If you do, then it will make all these other things good. And then we should agree with you that like, we should use the tactics you mentioned, because
it will be inevitable and all of those tactics will be obvious, or like, oh yeah, that makes sense, sure. And then you'll take for granted.
And I guess my response is like, that feels out of order. Like, to talk about the tactics before we've checked, like, are we here?
But yeah, and my assertion is to relax into that you are already here.
Are you up for checking right now?
For myself, I'm asserting this about you, but sure, I can check it for myself.
What are you asserting about me?
That you are already here, and if that seemed like a question, then then yeah, that part that's reciting that.
Then that's evidence that I don't have it.
In those moments from that single part, which is fine and a healthy part of not overfitting on being too overconfident, but it seemed like there was an implicit question on like, well, what are those next things? And I'm like, okay, well, you just relax into what you're already living, being.
So yeah, now what I'm wanting is for you to check if you feel yours.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to suggest if you wish to continue that exercise that it be after the episode. For people who are only listening, when we've been referring to it or here, there's been a gesture towards the sky with the finger that's associated with that. I think there was a part earlier in the conversation where we clarified verbally, but just in case.
Yeah. There's something that I like about non-verbal, like non-word symbols, like pointers, because they help break us out of the frame that words are the truth, when really words are just a certain kind of symbol trying to point at the good thing, if you want to call that the truth.
I can identify with that. I also like non-verbal cues. They do seem to, and that can include visual cues like gestures. I really like ones that are bodily, that have some sort of relation to movement, or so that can be sounds as well, potentially, or touch, or a visual symbol with your hand or whatever, or your whole body. But I think for me that attraction is more low level, like animal level.
Yeah.
But that might be pointing at something similar to what you're talking about. That the pre-verbal world. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's something. There's something about, for me, the felt experience of tapping into, the third attractor. I'm enjoying using this, just kind of using it in all the cases. It feels like a kind of, I've mentioned already that it feels like a kind of surrender. It also feels like a kind of dropping into my body, maybe because I tend to be in my head most of the time. And so things that like are from the body or bring me into the body, like bring me into my animal, feel like closer to the right path.
If I were being very critical, I suspect that we have a similar orientation towards that, but being very critical about it is that might be falling into a naturalistic fallacy in itself. That, it feels good to be with the animal, but that doesn't really relate to what we want in a long-term sense.
I mean, it definitely relates to what we want, but yeah, I don't think that
it's not the same. It does relate, but it may not be. Yeah, it's almost certainly not identical.
Yeah. I think there's I think in the like communities built around spirituality that I've seen, like especially new kinds of spirituality as opposed to like ancient religions, I've seen a lot of like emphasis on somatics and body engagement. And I think part of that is just because of the overemphasis on the head. Like if I imagine like we were all way too in our bodies and weren't using our minds at all, then like the first people to start using their minds would be like, guys, this is like sorcery. You should really try this. And instead we're just in the opposite thing. Did you ever read The Master and the Emissary? It's about like left brain, right brain.
No, I did not.
It's got some both cool stuff about left brain, right brain research, but also just pointing out how that might relate to a bit of the way that the social Darwinist, the god of social Darwinism, has like led us to being too much in our heads in modern culture. Anyway, yeah, point being, it's nice to be able to point with more than just our heads and our words.
Yeah, agreed on that. We have a few more minutes. I did want to do a tie-in more explicitly to how you think machine learning technology and future artificial intelligence relates to your project.
Sounds good. Haven't been thinking about this much, but it feels relevant. Um, I I guess the thing that falls directly from something I claimed is that I don't think that we should be building things that we're not wise enough to understand. And obviously it's a separate like question about how to not build things because there's a lot of momentum in the system. But
Yeah.
I think we can, but I know we can do it if we want to, if we sufficiently want to. If we're like, if we're like, you know what, yeah, we don't want to build things that we don't understand, then we could make sure we don't do that.
So
And
when you say don't understand,
mhm.
a thing we don't understand, that goes well beyond artificial intelligence. That goes into a lot of other things that we as societies are building.
Yeah, and I'm noticing already like quibbling of my own with that language because all of spirituality is building something you don't understand.
Yeah.
Um, but
There's something material about when like not understanding what like.
there's some sort of it's like a mismatch between power and wisdom that's holding it or something.
Hmm.
Or it's about like the humility um with which your creative force causes things in the world.
Hmm.
Because it seems to me that like with sufficient humility you find this
Hmm.
and you use it to guide your actions, and that it seems to me like when people are guided by this they end up creating things that are more beautiful than they could have planned.
Mm.
Sometimes we call them miracles um when we're especially impressed. But
Another word I like is like serendipity.
that's, oh
There's
my
a
gosh, you're preaching to the choir. That was one of my favorite words when I was first coming upon some of these ideas 2 years ago.
yeah.
And I just started saying yes to everything because I just found that like if I was just followed the cues from the universe, that like good things would happen or whatever. But yeah, so I think that so I think that if the combination of grasping, which is different than surrendering to the inner compass, and then grasping in a way that causes you to have more power to like fight on the good side in the good versus evil war, um it just doesn't, I think it's not a good recipe for success.
Mm.
um but also it's confusing because it's like, you know a complaint I hear a lot is like, well, if we don't build the guns, then someone else will, and then they'll shoot us with them. And I don't have an answer to that yet. I actually think it's correct to track who's going to build a gun and shoot you with it if you don't build it. I think that is correct to track that. It's like in the prisoner's dilemma, the tit for tat strategy is better than just pure cooperate. Um,
Right. Yeah, but that gets into some deeper generative dynamics of the system and like
right.
asking questions of like how do you escape a given generative dynamic when you don't have an option not to play, right?
Right. And as best I can tell, it's like, it's here. Like
It's
just,
here. Yeah,
yeah.
it's this.
And, what was the question? Oh yeah, integrating it into, so, you know, slowing down and having patience feel like obvious. Those seem like obviously good because there's like such huge variance of what could happen. And like, why not have a bit of patience? Like if we could slow it down by 10 years and wouldn't that make it much more likely things went well? And that would be true for any powerful technology, including nuclear bombs or fission or whatever. And part of the interesting question anyway, yeah. But so but the other thing is that it also is an invitation to like seek as a major objective, if not the primary, of anything you're building, for it to be aligned.
Mm.
whether it be yourself, whether it be an organization around you, a family, a country, with governance structure, like seek to zip up, seek alignment, and including literally, like, if you're part of a small AI startup, my intuition is that, like, a lot of AI startups would be doing more good in the world if they were a bit on the margin, more focused on the integrity of just their little team, and their interface with the rest of the universe, than on, like, achieving a particular technology.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I could go on and on, but we're actually at time. So
Okay.
I wanted to leave a couple of minutes for if you had any wrapping up thoughts at the
Okay.
end, and if you have any plugs for people in the audience about what they should read, what they should watch, or if you have a website, anything like that.
I don't have many plugs or websites. The I don't know if this is what you were going to say, but looking at your face after the last comment had me wanting to say that let's see, alignment of groups. I guess it had me wanting to forget.
There was something in there about group momentum and like how, especially when groups go through phase changes,
Oh.
and yeah, that there can be like momentum and the work of staying aligned for the group becomes more difficult. Like,
Yeah, especially with growth into larger groups.
yes,
Yeah, because I would guess most startups are actually, like, well aligned.
yeah, at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning, yeah. The thing I thought you were gonna say, which I guess I'll say, is that to be clear, I believe there are some technologies. Some of the technologies that are there. Going to be some technologies that are helpful for this aligning here and the aligning with the whole human race version of this. And some of them are going to be social technologies, like how do we, like, doing circling, which is a practice where you sit around in a circle and you meditate together. But it could also be, some of them I expect to be actual technical technologies,
Yeah.
Including using AI in particular ways. So I don't want to be, yeah, I think that feels really important in the tying up here, because it would be easy to listen to everything else I said and come away with the impression that, like, I think everyone should meditate as their primary, their primary thing they should do to make the world better or something. That's so terrible. But actually, like, so everything we're doing right now has beauty in it. Like, everything it's got something good about it. One way you can find this is to notice what's the best part of whatever you're doing, and you'll find this in it. And AI would be so helpful. Like, large language models are going to be, and I'm sure I actually have already started to see they're already being very helpful. I say already in part because there's this nonprofit, the AI Objectives Institute, that I'm on the board of, and they're trying to be a laboratory, sort of like a laboratory for different, like, technical technologies using AI in service of the third attractor, let's say. That's not their branding. That's sorry, apologies to Dayer, the CEO. So I absolutely believe there's lots we can do on the technical level. And I want all of that help, because we're going to try to be communicating. We already are communicating across, like 8-9 billion people, whatever, but, like, we're going to want to do it better. And large language models can help. Lots of other things can help. The thing you're thinking of right now that I'm not thinking of can help. So keep doing what you're doing, and seek the even better version that you would fantasize, and see how you can bring that, zip it into reality, into the present.
Great. Thanks for the takeaway.
Yeah.
This is the end of the show. So this was Andrew Broz. I was speaking with Timothy Telleen-Lawton, and we also had Altonson. Thank you for hosting. And this has been AI Safety Salon.
Thank you.